Welcome to the first live episode of Take the Plunge. Take the Plunge is where we interview business owners about why they took the plunge and started their own businesses. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Lucy McCarraher, co-founder of Magic AI, and has basically started her business from the get-go. So I believe so since starting university, you set up your first publishing company, have written 13 books, and also founded the Business Book Awards, I believe, as well. So very, very welcome, Lucy.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, I suppose, why you decided always to kind of go your own path?
Well, it wasn't really a choice. And back when I started my first company, it wasn't with my then husband. We'd moved to Australia for a job for him.
Yes.
And we just decided we'd run a theatre magazine.
Amazing.
When we got there, but nobody in those days was talking about using the word entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It was just something we were going to do. So we set it up, and it was a bit mad, and it didn't ever make any money, but it wasn't particularly meant to. But we ran a theatre magazine in a country that has an enormous geographical spread and a tiny population.
Yes.
And theatre's pretty niche in itself. So the fact that we managed to keep it going for 8 years was on a monthly basis was a nightmare, but B, quite impressive in retrospect.
And I suppose really interesting just to unpick kind of your first business. 8 years is pretty amazing to keep something going for in the first place. But I suppose what were some of the lessons you kind of picked up?
I suppose, and I really did not think, I can't emphasise enough how I didn't think in terms of I'm running a business or
Yes.
I'm an entrepreneur, I'm setting out to do something particular. It was just, at the same time, I was also finishing my degree, and then I got a job in TV, again, not full time, but,
Yes.
it sort of span off into different and other journalistic kind of jobs. So, but the lessons I learned were very much about organisation.
Yes.
As I hadn't done anything like this before, I turned out to be the organiser, and on a monthly magazine, you've got deadlines, you've got people who never submit their copy, you've got editing, you've got printing, proofs, all that kind of thing. And so I suppose that kind of turned out to be quite a forte of mine.
Yes.
Systems and handling people as well. I think was probably a lesson I learned. I think those are probably the two main things, being kind of running processes.
One thing you mentioned, obviously, Australia, vast country, not many people compared to how big it is. So, as you said, niche product. How did you think about going after customers?
Oh, exactly. I don't think we really did think about it much. It was sort of, we were kind of very in the theatre industry. My husband at that time was a lecturer in drama, and so we were just fascinated by, kind of in love with the whole idea of theatre, and Australian theatre was doing amazing things. So, we did do some advertising. I think one of the other things we did was we got a board of the top kind of theatre people.
Nice.
To help us, to work with us. So we distributed through theatres as well as through shops. And it was very niche. We probably didn't have a huge amount, but we would sit at our dining room table and kind of label envelopes. Remember, it was totally analog. Even the printing in those days was like, kind of long proofs. There was nothing online. There was no online then, so it was a whole other world.
And because you've kind of gone into so many different elements that make up a business, between the creating of it, the distribution, the finding the customers, the ecosystem. How did you and your husband divide up the roles, or was it just naturally you fell into different strengths areas, or how did it work?
I suppose he was always the kind of extrovert, the salesperson, the front person, and I was, kind of the background,
the operation.
Well, I'd like to think that, but that's probably not what he would have said. So I think it just, and then he was also, of course, being a lecturer and having a full-time job.
Yes.
Well, I was just a student, so I got to do most of the work in the end, really.
Nice.
So it just happened that way. It was, the whole thing was unthought through. It was like, let's start this thing and see what happens.
Fair enough.
Oh, whoops, we've started it.
And then I suppose coming towards the kind of end of that, what kind of brought you to decide, okay, we're going to pause on that, and what did you get into next?
Well, at one point we sold it to a bigger publishing
Yes.
company who bought it, realised they couldn't make it work, and sold it back to us for £1. So we
Okay.
had a kind of 6 months of kind
6
of
months of
living.
freedom.
And then in the end, actually, we came back from Australia for family reasons. But also, we had funded the business by lots of arts funding,
Yes.
which was around at that time. And it just started, so that was when things started to kind of.
Yeah, but actually, just unpicking that for a second, because well, within Swoop, you have lots of people coming on looking for grants, arts funding, whether it's the Arts Council in the UK. You obviously sound like you were successful at it at the time.
Yeah.
Any kind of tips or insights as to why you think you were able to kind of access that, or was it good timing?
I think it was good timing. There was still a fair amount of money around. I mean,
Yes.
Australia has the overall Australia Council, what it did then, I think it probably still does, which is like our Arts Council, but
Yes.
then every state has its own Arts
Yes.
Council. So, we got quite good at submitting applications and getting to know the people involved and schmoozing people, I guess, and using our board of, high profile people to
Yes.
to do that. So I suppose that's it's so much tougher now in the
sure.
arts. I mean, so much tougher. We'd never be able to do that again, either here or in Australia now. But
Yeah, I think we see that a lot with businesses, or particularly in the creative industries, trying to get that first production or something through. It can be incredibly difficult. So
yeah.
perseverance and maybe
Perseverance, and also these days, I mean, now you have to actually sort of say what you've done and have
Yes.
a bit of accountability,
Yes.
which, I mean, I'm sure we did to some extent there, but it wasn't like as part of the process in the same kind of way then, I don't think. So it really was a whole different era,
gotcha.
which,
And
yeah.
and I suppose then kind of you've now come back to the UK. You've had those 8 years experience of running a business, learning about the theatre industry. What was next for you?
So the next thing was, still with my husband, I wasn't later, but we started a video production company.
Oh, cool.
And I mean, we called it in those days, again, it was very kind of new. We called them video books, and we were the first people to do kind of educational, as in the sense of we did a cookery video with Prue Leith, we did gardening with
very
Alan
cool.
Titchmarsh.
Yeah.
We did yes, I can't remember, and then we did a series, and this was what actually made us,
Yes.
of explicit sex videos.
Wow.
It called The Lover's Guide, but it wasn't porn.
It was like sex
It was
education.
real sex education,
Yeah.
relationships education, but it was pretty explicit.
Yes.
And it actually got a rating from the BBFC, the British Board of Film Censors, which had never happened before, because it was actually good educational content.
So like a rating in terms of like, this is something that we would recommend
Yes,
people to
yes.
get informed.
Exactly, it
Oh,
was an
amazing.
18 rating, I
Yes,
guess. So, if it was just a blue movie, it wouldn't have got
Yes.
that kind of thing. So that meant we could go on sale in Smiths and at that time Virgin and Woolworths and all the kind of video stores.
Wow.
And, along with Prue Leith doing.
So talk me through. So would you and your husband rock up and kind of like in a Del Boy fashion have like Prue Leith cookery here, Alan Titchmarsh gardening,
yeah.
and let me show you my other.
Yeah,
How would those kind of
well, I mean,
meetings go?
it was about talking to the distributors generally,
Yes.
and I mean, some of the, I mean, they were all very keen to take Lover's Guide.
Yes.
And it was a huge, I mean, there was massive coverage in, the
press.
tabloids
Yeah,
at the time. And they tried to kind of smear the presenter with which was, but anyway, what it ended up with, on the first day it was released, there were literally queues around the block
Amazing.
to buy these videos, which was absolutely bizarre.
And had you foreseen this, or were you?
No, it was very touch and go. It
Yes.
could have absolutely broken us. I mean,
Yes.
it could have broken the company. It was,
Yeah, so it's fascinating. Like, so did you have kind of a limited production budget at the beginning, and you were deciding thematically we're going to invest in content in a few different areas and see how that goes, or what was the kind of strategy?
I think it was funded by one of the production companies. I can't remember. I think it was funded by Virgin Video
Yes.
at the time. And it was always a very sort of, like, is this going to work? Is this going to be an absolute disaster kind of thing? So, yes, there was a limited budget. but if it hadn't sold any, that would have been very bad news. And
Yeah. And did you find it hard to get it into the distributor's hands? Was that a easy process?
I think I wasn't really so much involved
Yeah.
in that. It wasn't that hard. It was quite edgy,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But it sort of, yeah, it didn't have too many kind of problems along the way.
Nice.
It was just whether the audience was going to go for it.
And how did you kind of keep track of, obviously, as you say, on the day, it seemed pretty successful, people queuing around the block. How were you able to see there was like a constant demand for it? Was there ways of kind of checking that?
I I don't honestly know. I mean, it was just like we then produced a whole load more.
Yeah.
I mean, different, versions of it, different
Yeah.
aimed at
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
markets, and then there were a whole load of lookalikes that it just became a thing, and then it just died out, I suppose. I mean, much later, but
Yeah.
it went on selling for a very long time.
Amazing. And so did
yeah.
you and your husband continue to then invest in the video production business, or did you look to start to doing different things?
After that, my husband and I split up.
Okay.
So,
Right.
I mean,
Each
we
go.
were doing actually really interesting other stuff. And we weren't
Yeah.
just doing those videos.
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
also
yeah.
doing TV productions. So
Amazing.
we produced created a series called Runaway Bay for kids, which
Yes.
was set in Martinique.
Oh, very cool.
So we spent 3 summers shooting it in Martinique, and it was a sort of it was quite cutting edge because it was very diverse in its
Yes.
casting.
Yes.
And it was kind of Enid Blyton sort of kids detective stuff.
Yeah.
Team of 5 kids of sort of.
And how did you settle on filming in Martinique?
Well, actually, because it was a French co-production, it was meant to be set in Jamaica, but it was a French co-production, so you do it in a French territory.
There you go. Yeah.
It's extraordinary what kind of.
And just curious, do you like have a voracious appetite to always be trying something different and new? Because it's
I think we were always doing lots of things. It was just a sort of I don't know. Just both of us were very kind of creative and. Yeah, no, and then we did a very early kids environmental show with Chris Packham, called Go Wild, which wasn't one of his biggest ones, but it was really fun working with him. And what else? Well, so yeah, we had a kind of variety of
amazing
things going on. So on the one hand, nice, good kids TV,
Yes.
and on the other hand,
sex education. Yeah,
exactly. Let's not let them meet in the middle.
and a bit of gardening from Alan as well on the side.
Yes, exactly. Who then went on to write quite explicit novels.
Yeah, maybe he was
I don't
inspired.
think that's anything to do with it, but
Maybe he learned something from you guys. But I mean, you kind of like there's a nonchalance in terms of we tried this and this, but a lot of people, but even business entrepreneurs, I would say, struggle with all the different aspects of thinking through businesses, moving or pivoting. But for you, just as you kind of talk through, it seems like it was like a natural flow to try things out. Is that a fair reflection?
yes, totally. I mean, nothing is planned. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, you can't talk about my career. It doesn't sort of,
Yeah.
it just things just happened. We just came up with ideas. Let's try this one. Let's try that one.
And like, does anything phase you in terms of like, oh, that doesn't work, or this isn't working, or this is going really well, I want to continue? Like, or you just kind of.
It does now. It didn't.
You really. At what point did it start to kick in?
Well, I suppose. I mean, I stopped working in TV because my husband and I split up, and I needed to kind of go and do something else. So I became a work-life balance consultant again, just because I happened to meet some people who kind of thought my skills could kind of benefit them. And I did 10 years of that, and it was fascinating stuff. And I went into corporates and small businesses and kind of did work-life balance trials and all the stuff that people are talking about now, like job share and flexible working and stuff. It all worked incredibly well. I mean, it was, I've got all the proof that, it made businesses better, but it didn't really kind of take off then. So I spent 10 years doing that, and that was actually what I wrote my first book about.
Yes.
We were asked to write 2 books. I mean, one for corporates and one for individuals on work-life balance, which was a new word again at the time. And then, as that sort of petered out, I I actually spent a couple of years writing some novels, and then I met Joe Gregory, who was running a small publishing company of non-fiction books. I discovered he lived near me. In fact, he published one of my books,
Yes.
which was non-fiction.
Yeah.
And then we met. We didn't even realise we lived near each other. We met at a networking event, and his business partner had just left.
Yes.
And I was kind of, needed my next step.
Yes.
And I sort of thought about it, and I put a proposition to him, and I sort of said, look, I've done this and I can do this, and I wonder if there's a role for me in your business. And he thought about it, and I wonder who this woman is. And we agreed that we'd try it.
Yes.
And so I joined him as his commissioning editor with his publishing company,
Amazing.
which had a traditional business model, which is that the publisher invests in the book and then gets the money back on book sales. But he was working with entrepreneur expert authors who actually wanted to build their business with their book rather than sell loads of copies.
Yes.
So writing a book for their niche market, and probably giving away lots of books to make, to get the business building and make their return on their investment that way, rather than book sales of, £1 a time or whatever.
Yeah.
So we tried out, that's why we called it Rethink Press.
Yes.
We had an idea that we would have a different business model, which would involve the author paying for the production costs up front. So neither of us had that a
Cost of
necessity
capital at the beginning,
to sell books to get the money back.
Yes.
And we sort of tried. We put it around, and
how did it go?
and it kind of was slow to begin with.
Yes.
We had a few people who said, "Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to go with you." And then it just took off. I mean, we started as literally a two-person company.
Yes.
Joe would do all the design and publishing bit,
Yes.
and I would do all the editing and writing bit.
Yes.
And then, I mean, now we, 13 years later, we've got a team of 40 odd people working
Amazing.
around the world. We publish 70 books a year, and it's been luckily it's been successful.
Good on you. And talk me through, because that's a pretty big pivot on a traditional business model. Is that the same business model you still use today with, say, those seven?
It is actually, yes.
And
yes.
And
it's now called hybrid publishing.
Hybrid publishing.
Yeah.
And how do authors, I suppose, or business entrepreneurs that want to write, how do they discover it, or do they just come and find you guys naturally now because it's been going for so long?
Interesting, yes. I mean, also we linked up with, I don't know if you've heard of the Key Person of Influence program.
No. Tell me.
No, it's an entrepreneur accelerator,
Yes.
run by Daniel Priestley, that started around the same time as we started, maybe 13, 14 years ago.
Yes.
And it is for entrepreneurs of a certain size to really upscale their business.
Yes.
And it's sort of based on 5 Ps, which I'm now going to forget, which are pitch, publish,
Yes.
product,
Yes.
profile, and I've forgotten what the last P is, but it is. It'll come back to me.
No worries. But in essence, entrepreneurs or business owners need to have a certain thing within their business to be able to get into the network. Is it like certain revenue size or something like that? Is it, or?
No, they don't. They don't have to. I mean, I think they're generally 6-figure turnover businesses when they go on and they become bigger than. Yeah, and that's about the. I don't think there isn't a kind of like a rule
set in
that
stone.
you have to be a particular size, but I suppose it's about potential and the desire to grow.
Yeah.
And it's called the Key Person of Influence program because it's all about building the business around making yourself a key person in your industry.
Yes.
And one of the ways to do that is to become the author of a book.
Makes sense.
And so, the whole originally the whole publish element was about writing your book. And I became the publish mentor of the KPI program, which meant that I was taking hundreds, literally, of entrepreneurs through the process of writing their book.
Amazing.
And then they would usually come back and publish it with Rethink Press.
And I suppose just digging into the kind of the mentoring and the KPI piece, you've obviously had the nice ability to see it on scale in terms of all these authors coming together, the ones that's working, the ones that's not. What were those metrics you were trying to encourage them to think through to allow them to be set up for success?
Well, I suppose I mean, we developed a process for writing that actually for writing that book that
Yes.
would build your business, as opposed to just thinking, oh, I'd like to write a book about this, or you know,
Yes.
this would be a nice thing to talk about. One of the things you have to be very clear about is you're not writing a book to help all those people who you can't reach in your business. I mean, yes, those people might well read your book and get
But
value
that's
from
not the
it,
audience.
but the audience you're talking to is very specifically your ideal client, and your book is there to introduce them and give them information about you, your case studies,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
way you work, your model particularly, and that's how you write your book. So we have sort of 3 steps. We develop 3 steps to writing the book. The first is positioning, which we use the 3 P's of position: person, pain, and promise. You can
Yes.
kind of guess what that kind of
Yes.
works out at, but going into depth on that.
Yes.
And then we have the Bookbuilder planning process, which we actually developed from using originally index cards, coloured index cards, to divide your content into 3 types of content and then structure it with chapters and sort of
Yes.
bigger parts. And it's when you look at your book laid out on a table or a pinboard or whatever, you know, and you can say, oh, I'll move that one to there and I'll, you know, that one. It's sort of, it makes people think, oh God, I can write a book. You know, I do have all
Yes.
that content.
Yes.
I know what I'm talking about. And when you plan in detail first, then it makes the writing a lot easier. So I don't think I'm answering your question.
No, you are. So I'm absolutely fascinated. So like you're really creating a science for a lot of entrepreneurs to articulate what it is that makes great about their business in their niche, so that obviously they can get that out to potential customers that want to work with them. Like it's a
Yeah.
pretty amazing science.
No,
And
no,
obviously,
that's great. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it, because I think people think about book writing as an art and a creative thing.
Yeah.
And to some extent it is, but you know, it is a science actually to
Yeah.
get that book.
Yeah, maybe
written.
I'm just thinking the way you describe it, it's so interesting because it's giving business owners a real pathway to
Yeah,
grow their businesses,
exactly.
and it's amazing to see that you guys have built such an awesome business model around that as well to be able to support that. And I'm assuming because if you guys aren't necessarily putting the capital at the beginning, that by going through the hybrid press program, you're connecting some sort of longevity connection to that business
Yeah,
going forward.
yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And then yes, I'm thinking of it as a science. The after the planning, then the writing is also a step-by-step process, which we've broken down into something called the writer process.
Yeah.
And it's about not seeing writing a book as this huge kind of amorphous task with
Yes.
all sorts of weird bits and when do I do this and when do I do
Yes.
that, but actually taking it step by step in manageable chunks.
Amazing.
And I think the thing that I've also learned more than anything else is that somehow you need to stick with the person writing their book, because otherwise they will give up. I mean, quite not everybody, but you know, they need some kind of check-in, someone to talk to.
Because I imagine it's a bit like a marathon. You've got
Yes.
across the 26 miles. You're not going to be feeling great, pucker.
No,
So
no,
if someone's there
exactly.
going, "You got this, buddy. Keep going."
And you're right, it is totally an emotional journey. I mean, there are times when you can guarantee that
Yeah.
someone's going to feel, oh, this is shit, nobody's going to read this.
Absolutely.
This is the worst book ever.
Yeah.
I can't, you know, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then other times when they're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to change
I'm Shakespeare.
the world. Exactly. And none of those are usually quite, you know, exactly right.
So you're either bringing them up or like taking them back down.
It's just sort of like, okay, just stick with it. That's
Yeah.
all you've got to do. Just keep
Yeah.
writing, and that's the...
And I'd imagine you've come across some amazing characters, but also interesting niches about what they're writing.
Well,
Yeah, come on,
absolutely,
give me some
really.
of the good ones.
Well, one of them, I mean, one of our KPIs runs a white goods business for
Okay.
the hospitality
Yes,
industry.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it was a book about a lot about washing machines.
Okay, wow.
Dishwashers and
There's a lot, yeah.
honestly, it was surprisingly interesting. It
Yeah,
really
no,
was.
I can well imagine. Like even when in Sweep, we help a lot of laundry companies asset finance their laundry
right.
machines, and it's an amazing
Yes.
niche. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly. So there was history, there was facts
Yeah.
and figures, there was developmental stuff,
Yeah.
science. It was
so
amazing.
you're a connoisseur of the white goods industry.
Absolutely, I know it all now. Yes,
Amazing. Any ones you struggle through in terms of a niche?
I really couldn't say.
Okay. I'm sure there's a few in there.
No, none of them. They're all brilliant. But no, there is a massive range because when we talk about business books,
Yes.
it's a book about their author's business,
For
not,
sure.
like business as in finance or
Yes. Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
Although many are like that
Yeah.
too.
And then talk me through, obviously you're really helping and mentoring these authors, which sounds like a very personal thing, getting them there, getting them to the finish line. But you've also told me that over the 13 years you've built it up in its own business, in its own right, to 40 plus people covering, I think it was 70 odd countries. How are you simultaneously helping these authors through whilst also building the business itself in hybrid?
That's a very good question. I suppose I don't know. I just am very good at. I mean, the inside of my head looks like a Google Calendar.
Yeah, it must be like.
I just, and it probably doesn't help me enjoy my life to the full, but I always know exactly what I'm doing and for how long I need to do it. And, it's just,
I hope we're running on schedule here, Lucy. I'm really sorry for being late.
No, I mean, it's, I don't know. I can't really dissect it. It's just the way I work that I'm kind of I'm both big picture and very detail orientated.
And are you using any kind of fascinating, because that is not an easy skill set to be able to do all those things simultaneously. Do you use any kind of tools out there to help manage your kind of thinking, your process, your diary, anything like that?
I mean, I genuinely, I use a Google Calendar and that's key for me. But I mean, the business, and I also don't want to suggest that I'm doing this on my own.
Of course.
I mean, my business partner, Joe Gregory, has absolutely done. I mean, we are so different. We are chalk and cheese, and he is very creative. But and his background is marketing, and marketing is not my forte at all. I don't particularly like going out there and selling myself or even the business. But he is brilliant at that. So it's having that kind of. I think it's either luck. I mean, it's a certain amount of luck, perhaps some judgment as well. But it's being able to pick the right people to work with you to make something work.
Yeah, you talk about it so easy. It's not very easy.
It's not it hasn't all been. We've had problematic times as well.
And how do you manage with that? Because
I can get very stressed about it.
That's completely normal.
I mean, a couple of years ago, we bought our nearest competitor in the hybrid business book publishing business, and it was great. They wanted to sell. It was a very good fit. We wanted to buy, but it wasn't something we'd done before. Actually, it's massively complicated and time consuming and expensive. And there were times when we thought, oh goodness, was that a good move? Should we have done that? And I mean, it's all kind of evening out now, and it's.
And what were some of those challenges? Was it culturally bringing two things together? Was it like legally how you take ownership of things, or what were the toughest bits?
Legally, yes, there's just lots of things to do, like changing account names and things that it seems like nothing, but it can take absolutely. It took me. I won't name the bank, but it took me a year to close one account.
I knew it was going to be back. It's mad how hard it is to open a bank and close an account.
Exactly, it was absolutely mad. So there were things like that, and publishers have accounts with all sorts of distributors, and it's not just Amazon. There's lots of distribution, printers, all sorts of stuff. So kind of bringing two companies together was quite time consuming and lengthy.
Were there efficiencies in it?
Yes, there were. Yes, absolutely. No, it's actually worked out really well because in a couple of years down the line, it's great. And there were, I mean, we kind of thought that we all had the same kind of culture in a way, but it wasn't quite. And there were sort of areas where that one company would do things in a certain way, and the other company, well, us, would say, no, that's not the way we do it. We work in a different way from a different premise, and sort of and working out who was the right person in the right seat to be doing the right jobs and things like that.
And so again, did time just take its course there?
Yes, it was really a question of time. I mean, some people we did let go in the end, which is, but it was the right thing, hopefully, for all of us at the time. For sure. There was a kind of rationalisation there.
You touched on Amazon, and that kind of picked my brain there for a second, because I was really curious to dig into distribution, because I imagine it's changed massively, even in such a short space of time. So with hybrid, how have you managed to stay on top of all the different routes? How do you track which ones is working, which ones aren't working? Just really curious to unpick that
I
for a
mean,
second.
it is complicated, and that's where we have a team kind of doing that sort of
Yes.
stuff. So it's not my,
Yeah.
luckily not for me, not really my area of the business. But
Yeah.
no, it is very complicated. I mean, the whole of publishing almost broke like sort of 20 odd years ago when
Yes.
print on demand. I mean, because before the whole business model of the traditional publisher was the gatekeeper to getting your book published as an author. And if a publisher wouldn't take you, give you a contract, you were stuffed. You had no way of getting your book out there.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
crucially, not distributed, as you say. There was no way of getting into bookshops as a single author. But then Amazon came along, print on demand came along, and that was what hybrid publishing could take advantage of, because the investment of a traditional publisher is to print books up front.
Yes.
And if they didn't sell, you'd lost your money. You've got this stack of books in a warehouse and no money coming back on them. So with print on demand, you no longer had to do that. Amazon, as you know, you buy a book off Amazon, they rush off and print it and deliver it to you the next day. I mean, and that's kind of like magic.
It is magic.
And it means so neither the publisher nor the author has to invest in upfront print runs. And that was where hybrid publishing kind of made that difference.
Yeah.
So yes, it's all kind of, I mean, we very rarely put our books in bookshops. We can, and some books do well there, but you have to be, again, because bookshops are physical, they have limited shelf space. The bookseller, the bookstore owner will only take a very limited number of books, and again, only the ones they think are going to sell. They're not going to put your book, randomly, a book on white goods.
I don't know why.
I don't know why. There's not a shelf really for that, strangely.
Shocked Waterstones are not putting this front and centre.
Exactly. So it's sort of it has all changed, and you can be, but it's still complex. The kind of underground, as it were, of publishing. It's not just Amazon. There's lots of kind of distribution routes.
Yeah, because I'd imagine that's where there's some challenges and there's an art to it, because in some ways, yes, it's frustrating. There's a gatekeeper back in the day, and if the gatekeeper didn't like you, that's really annoying. But if the gatekeeper did like you, they've got like, right, here we go, and just sprays it all out. Whereas I'd imagine now there's a whole art in terms of how to market yourself to even be seen, because you're going to an audience instead of one to millions.
Yeah, exactly.
As part of the work you do with the author, not necessarily just on the book, but how to profile themselves in terms of to
yes, I mean that has become, I mean, on the one hand we have a fantastic team of coaches and writers who help people get the book written, and at the other end we work with them to I mean, we have a PR partner that they can use, but also it's more about marketing yourself, and of course it's all about social media these days, and putting your book out there as the thing. If you don't like selling yourself, sell your book. That's okay. That's much easier. But also as the positioning tool, as I am the expert because I have written a book. A book is like an iconic format that says expert. And so yes, it's about. I mean, the distribution just kind of goes on, but the author really has to do the selling, even with a traditional publisher. Unless you're a really big author, they expect you to do it as the author. Then they do a little bit when it first comes out, but then that's why a traditional publisher will cherry pick the authors who. I mean, our kind of thing is that traditional publishers go for authors who sell books. We create books that sell authors.
Oh, nice. So always flipping it on its head. And I suppose to kind of a bit tangential to that, but like throughout our conversation here, you have demonstrated where you've been ahead of the curve, whether that's working weeks, how people adapt, how they work. And your latest venture sounds like you're capitalizing on current trends in terms of book magic AI. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that whole thing I was talking about, the process of getting the book written, which we've kind of honed over the last 10 years, has now been turned into an app.
Amazing.
We found, I mean, somebody who was actually on KPI and is an app
Yes.
developer, Jonathan Farrer. He sort of just came up with this idea about, I'm not getting my book written. I'm an app developer. Should I, I might think about creating an app to write my book. And we kind of saw that and went, hey, you need to do this with us. We're the people who can tell you how to write your book. But an app is a brilliant idea.
Fantastic.
So yeah, we've been working together for nearly a year now. It was it was quite. I think he thought it was much simpler. The process would be much simpler than it was. We thought the app would be much simpler than it was.
I mean,
and the two together are very complicated, but very easy to use. I mean, that's the amazing thing. It just takes the user. I mean, it's a subscription basis, so you subscribe month by month. You can drop off anytime.
Yes.
There are different levels that you can get different, amounts of feedback in. But at the essential level, you get the positioning, and you get an AI coach, one of which is me, which is very weird.
So did you have to do any kind of training to
I just had to say a few, when you
pick up the tones.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So it's not my voice at all either.
Yeah.
So it's
really.
Quite disturbing to see it.
It's amazing.
But there are another handful of actual AI coaches who you can choose, and that person coach takes you through the process that I would take people through. So the positioning and then the planning, the cards, which then we did turn into a separate piece of software, but are now in the app.
Yeah.
Still, the 5 coloured cards from the index cards are in there. And then the writing process. But the AI is not about writing your book. It doesn't do writing. We're kind of there is an app out there that will write a 30,000 word book in 15 minutes. You can watch it.
Yes.
But what's the point?
Yes.
It's not,
You're not learning.
It can get information from the internet from everywhere, but nothing from inside your head.
Yes.
So we're very clear that this is the AI is about supporting you through the process. So for instance, one of the things you can do is by talking about your ideal client, you can create an ideal client avatar in the app.
Yes.
Who you can then talk to and say, have I told you enough about this subject? What else would you like to know on this one? What have I left out? And so you've got your coach on the one hand that you can talk to, your AI coach, and you've got your ideal client who you're writing to and whose picture sits there on the top of your screen as you write because you're talking to that person.
And how do users use the app? Is it an app store? Is it online?
It's not on the app store. It's online.
Online.
Yeah.
And where if you're on desktop, you search Bookmagic.
Yes, exactly. Bookmagic.ai. I mean, and you can use it on every platform. I mean, it's, obviously it's phones, it's iPads, whatever. You can move between them as well.
Yeah.
And what's also nice is that you can write. Obviously, you type your book in, but also you can speak it in, and it will appear. Cool. So if you're just sitting in the car for 10 minutes, think, I've got a great idea. I must put this bit in. You can just talk into your phone, and it will go into your book.
And how have you enjoyed or not enjoyed the experience of working with and building out an application from a business perspective?
I've really enjoyed it. It's been so interesting.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful to see that, I think I do quite a good job in mentoring people through the process in an analog way, but it's really exciting to see even, so much that the AI can do that you can't do even as a person. It's and also what I hope is that that this is a kind of author revolution in a way. It will be so much easier for so many more people to write their book because, it's expensive being coached or even being on a coaching, group coaching program. And it's potentially slower, and I've been with the Business Book Awards. I've kind of been on a mission to get more women and more diverse authors to write their books and get them out there. And I hope that the app will mean that
mini AI version of you could definitely do a lot of damage out there in the world for sure.
That's
no, it's amazing, and you really kind of brought the red thread of what you described your art form in hybrid in terms of nurturing and coaching people through highs and lows and taking that into talk to your client and not using AI to copy everything down, but just to
Yeah,
encourage and to
exactly.
nurture it out of the potential author, which
Yes,
is really, really
and
cool to
come up
see.
with good
Yeah.
ideas as well. I mean, AI is brilliant at some stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you know, just coming up with initial ideas, helping with the
Yes.
planning. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
good at that. But we also do have a human. I mean, you can literally with one tap you can book an hour with a real
Oh,
life
amazing.
coach. And we have a Facebook, at the moment it's Facebook, a Facebook group for everybody to join.
Yes.
And I do a live Zoom call twice a week with anybody who wants to come on it. So I
Amazing.
haven't I'm not completely AI. I'm
That's
still
good.
there as a human.
And Lucy, just reflecting on, we've gone from analog printing in Australia, Alan Titchmarsh gardening, sex education videos, TV production, bit of Martinique, children's TV, AI writing, changing the publishing dynamic. What are you thinking next, or is just maybe give it a rest, or what are you thinking?
Actually, what I'd really want to do is sit down and write a novel, which is kind of
Just the
banging
14th
away.
one, yeah.
No, I've only written 3 novels, but also I really want to create, and I'm not sure if it's in the same app or a different app. I
Yes.
want to create a fiction writing app,
Yeah.
and sort of do more on fiction writing, because
I love it.
that is what I do when I'm not doing
Yes.
everything else.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of fiction takes me to a different place, and I need a break often. So I listen
Amazing.
to innumerable audiobooks, detective stories,
Yes.
all sorts, and
Yeah, well, I'm a fan myself. I'm always on the Robert Galbraith on
oh,
Audible.
love
I
it.
just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
can't get enough of it. But yeah, and how do you manage the taking time out whilst also doing all the business side of it?
I don't know. I don't really take time out at
Yeah, I
all, to
can
be
see that
honest.
probably. Yeah,
I mean, I mean, it's not that I'm. I mean, I enjoy what I'm doing,
yeah,
so it's not like I need kind of me time. My family is pretty grown up. I mean, I've got grandchildren, and
yeah.
but and I've got yeah. I mean, my family takes up the rest of my time basically. I own a few animals, but that's it really.
I feel like it's like Mary Poppins bag or something I'm talking to here.
That's a
It
great.
just doesn't stop. And
I
maybe
love that.
maybe
Yeah.
that's the way to wrap it up. But I mean, honestly, you're an absolute inspiration.
I'll take
You've
that.
been look
Practically perfect.
actually perfect. Mary Poppins bag, Lucy. Thank you so much for coming on and just going through everything. I mean, anyone listening would be like, what inspiration, and you just everything seems like water off a duck's back. It's so refreshing to listen to. So yeah, enjoy it. You always seem to be, but best of luck with it
Thank
all.
you. Thank you so much, Ciaran.
No problem.